University, right on Court Street. I have my master's from Binghamton and my doctorate from Northeastern. My educational experience was working with, working at Mohawk Valley Community College for 20 years. And clearly I started as a part-time faculty member. So I spent 10 years during a time when they just weren't hiring full-time folks. So I was very fortunate and blessed and able to work part-time as well as raise my beautiful children. And as time progressed, I took on a full-time position and then finished in administration as a dean. I have found that Mohawk Valley Community College provided a wealth of wisdom, as so many of the students that I worked with were first time in their family to ever go through the higher education process. I also worked as a Whitestown court clerk part-time for a little over 30 years, and that provided me so much guidance and wisdom when we talk about public safety in so many senses. In the Assembly, I serve on various committees, Veterans Affairs, Higher Education, Agriculture, Banks, Economic Development. I also am a member of various task force that includes the Latino as well as the Asian Pacific, and that is because of the number of individuals within our community. So I am not of that heritage, but I represent them. So I'm very fortunate to be a part of those task force. In fact, in Utica, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, there's over 100 Latino businesses. So it is up and growing and very significant. I'm a member of the Upstate Caucus, which is a majority group that meets on a regular basis to look at issues that are faced within Upstate. I also am a member of the Mohawk Valley N.U.N.A, which is a bipartisan group that exclusively looks at the needs of the Mohawk Valley. We have determined that as we look into the future, that the Mohawk Valley 9 is going to turn into about the Mohawk Valley 14 because of the number of individuals in the district. So that's a great group that comes together to have those conversations of what we need in the Mohawk Valley. I can say in my tenure, I've sponsored well over 100 bills, and that's just the first step, because bringing a bill forward is a great idea, and it comes from people like you that tell me this is what we need. But unfortunately, the steps of making sure I can get it through committee, which is something that I take great pride in working very hard. And then it has to go to the floor, and then as we await for the governor to sign these bills. Some of the bills that I'm very proud of is a bill that looked at catalytic converters because of the number of thefts. So I sat with the DA, I sat with the various police agencies, and clearly it came from in Rome, that was the number of catalytic converters that were being stole out of his business as he was repairing them. So we collaboratively worked together, put the legislation forward, and it was passed. The pushback was extensive until the chair's catalytic converter got it. So he thinks I did it. I was like, no, because I wouldn't. I think it was so important. But what it did is went after the individual that's actually obtaining the converters. So just a different approach we took, and that's why it works. So if I show up with 8 catalytic converters and I only have 1 car registered, it's quite obvious that I'm stealing. Bianca's bill, another horrific murder that happened within this community, and this murderer actually placed this on social media. So now it is a crime to put anything forward in regards to criminal activity. The difficulty is the enforcement, but it is something that I'm proud to say that the pathway over this last session was further that takes a look at social media posting that affect our children. So more importantly, in the sense of that, starting that process.
Mrs. Buttenschon, 30 seconds, please.
30 seconds to
Thank you.
wrap it up. As far as financially, looking at over $9 million that I had put forward just within the district, as well as over $100 million collaboratively for those folks that I work on with Mohawk Valley 9. So I have to say, attend numerous meetings, have brought many different commissioners here to this area as well as their team to make sure that you're being heard. I thank you for this time, and again, I appreciate and hope that you will consider it. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I also appreciate Mary Ann for agreeing to speak as well. It's an opportunity to get to know each of us. I think we're good people. We just have different political views. And so I appreciate everybody here. So my name is Christine Esposito. I'm running for the 119th Assembly District, which I'm sure most of you know consists of Utica, Rome, Marcy, Deerfield, Whitestown, and Floyd. You know, when I go door to door, people ask me, why are you running? Why are you putting yourself out there? And I'm putting myself out there because we live in a wonderful community of the Mohawk Valley. I enjoy raising my girls here. For the last few years, this county and the state has struggled. We've looked at, you know, different legislation that's been passed, and it's difficult for us. To be a part of the solution, not the problem, and that's why I'm stepping forward and running. We need checks and balances in the legislation, in our legislator, and currently with the one-party rule and passing reckless legislation, we've had to deal with the consequences in our community. And prime example of those consequences are bail reforms, which are protecting the rights of our criminals or the rights of our victims. Also, we look at illegal immigration, where we're spending more on illegal immigration than we are on our seniors, our homeless, and our veterans combined within our budget, and not to mention our failed economic leadership. In the past few years, we've had an increase of 37% in our budget, and you know, the citizens of our county are struggling. You know, our groceries are increasing, our you know, gas is increasing, our electric is increasing, our interest rates, our homes, everything is increasing, and we're definitely looking at a decline. And so how can we change things? And the way to do that is stepping up. I would just like to say, to talk a little bit about myself. I'm, you know, from Rome. I started when I met my husband. We lived on her street in Utica. We lived there for a few years, and then with the base closure, we moved out to Warner Robins, Georgia, for a short period of time, and then Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. And at that time, you really learned to see how things are, how there's growth in other areas. I come from a family of both my parents had small businesses where they, you know, struggled, but they worked hard and eventually opened up. Both of them opened up their own businesses. And when you see different states and you see regulations that, you know, reducing regulations, you see not as many mandates that come forward to restrict our small businesses. You see growth. And I think that those are things that we need to see in our community. I would just like to finish by saying that I love this community. I'm running because I feel like we deserve change, and I think I'm the person that can make that happen. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Excellent. So I appreciate both of the candidates keeping the time reasonable for us. Thank you. And what we are going to do next is we are going to defer to the audience. And like I said, we will alternate which candidate answers the question first and which candidate answers the question second. So what audience members have questions? Raise your hands. Great. I think Nancy, and then we'll do that in order. So here we go, Nancy.
New York State is a high tax state. What is your plan to help reduce taxes?
Excellent. So we'll start with Ms. Esposito, and then we'll finish with Ms.
I agree with you. It's a high tax state, and I think one of the things we face is, especially in our smaller cities. Let me see that. Okay, especially in our smaller cities, is that you have an influx of that tax base leaving the city, and so one of the things you need to do is encourage people to stay here, build roots here, have a job here, and commit to our cities. And when they do that, the tax base will increase. If you look at, I think they're saying out of New York State, the average tax base is about $100,000. They're leaving salary. They're leaving our state. Meanwhile, lower income is staying here. That creates a disparity. So you really need to do things that can entice people to commit to staying here in New York. Secondly, I think that one of the things that we look at is for our budget. I talk about having a 37% increase in our budget. We don't necessarily have a revenue problem in our state. We have a spending problem. And so how can we reallocate some of this money to address things that need to be addressed in our cities to help our cities out? We can spend billions of dollars on illegal immigration, but we cannot spend the money that is needed in our cities to help our tax base. So that's another thing we can look at to address those issues. My concern is the mandates coming forward, whether it's, I think we all feel we want to help the environment, the green initiatives, but where is the money going to come from? And that's my concern with, the different tax bases. Thank you.
Mrs. Buttenschon, response, please.
Thank you. Within the state budget process, there is generally 9 budget bills, and each one of them is broken down by a different topic. And the first step you can do is, in those bills, so much is added and support and brought in that isn't necessary. So what do? I vote no. It's not popular. It's not something that clearly makes sense to some individuals, because not one person that comes to my office asking for money, they got a lot of zeros when they're asking, is they have a good passion and they have a good reason of why that funding is there. When we talk about education, when we talk about healthcare, and so many of those aspects. But I'm not sure if it was Joe or Mike, they talked about the lacrosse tournament and then the women's hockey tournament. So what I did is put legislation forward for a bed tax. So those individuals that are coming into this area that provides funding for this community. And we did an increase. It's not something that I like to do, but it's something that had to be done. And those are individuals that come into this area. And any one of you that travel, you generally pay the bed tax elsewhere. So it's something that's pretty common to bring in funding. Clearly, Mike talked about the sales tax revenue. It is up. It is something that when each one of these two tournaments that are brought here, the secondary effects of them, or the botch tournament, each individuals come in, they stay in our hotels, they eat food, they buy gas, and each one of those individuals is supporting this community, and that clearly within that sales tax increase that we have seen in the state. What we find is, yes, the funding is overwhelming. I think it needs to be a mindset of a change that turns into many individuals that come forward with somewhat of a, you did it for them, why aren't you doing it for me? And they don't even need it, but they still feel that within that process. And I think that's something we have to look at culturally in a sense of how we're gonna dial that back. Yes, a lot of things within the budget. It's well known, I didn't support public financing for campaigns. I just don't think it's right. I mean, we're over $25 million. I just don't understand it, you know. I didn't support the funding for the migrants. There's just so many things that just can't happen. So that's when you ask, what am I gonna do? That's what I've been doing. Thank you for the question.
Excellent, thank you.
As we know, we're approaching a date that's going to be affecting all of us. It's the governor mandated that by, I think it's 2027, that we have all electric school buses in the state of New York. And I think it's by 2035, we're looking at over 50% of all vehicles that will be sold will be electric vehicles. And according to some reports that have been made by some institutes, we do not have the power structure. We don't have the grid to do it. But yet our governor has banned, we're not going to be doing any more fossil fuels going in with natural gas. We shut this pipeline off. We're not doing that. Are we looking at the feasibility of nuclear energy? We tore down Indian Point. And now are we going to be looking at the feasibility of redoing nuclear energy to do that? Because school districts have already stated they're not going to be able to afford the electric buses. When you're talking, I think it's over $150,000 per bus to do it. And when you've got a situation, okay, more, yeah. So when you're talking a school district the size of White Squirrel and the number of electric buses you're going to have, and plus now you need the charging stations to do it, where are you going to do it? I'd like to hear your, how you would handle that.
Mrs. Buttenschon, please take the first response.
So you're 100% correct that it isn't doable. And it's not only school buses, it's the plows that plow our streets. There's so many other factors. So what I did is I had NYSERDA to come here. And NYSERDA canceled on me 4 times, but my husband will tell you I persisted. So they showed up. And each one of the superintendents of school were invited, as well as every highway superintendent. We had close to a dozen highway superintendents, and some of the school districts sent individuals to talk about why it can't be done. Would they like to see it possibly in the future? Would they like to see a process of maybe one bus to see how it works? But it's not only the bus that you're buying, that's $300,000, is the infrastructure within the bus garage, because they don't have the ability. Your point is well known and clearly well stated. I have businesses right now that lose power. So clearly we need to have the infrastructure before we could go through the next steps of how to electrify. Is there discussion, your question about nuclear power? There is. We've had 3 different meetings, and I can tell you that Mr. Sacco in Deerfield has been a part of these and is very helpful. He went to Rochester for me, he went to Syracuse to represent the office, to have those discussions, because his career was spent understanding this process of how to ensure that we have the power that we need. We have numerous meetings with the governor's office explaining, yes, we want to move towards a green community. We want to be environmentally friendly, but we have to be practical. So When NYSERDA came to Utica and heard from so many individuals explaining that are experts, okay? When you talk to Utica Mac, that's what he does. And he spelled it right out. And the school superintendents and the highway, I mean, we won't be able to plow and maintain our highways. So it's talking about a slow progression in a positive manner that could be done, and nuclear is one of the discussions that is happening. The problem is, who wants it in their backyard? So that's where it gets, as you stated, with Indian Point. Could it be regenerated and moved up again? Some say yes, some say no, but the community says no, very strong no. So thank you for that question, because it's very important.
Thank you, Ms. Buttenschon. Mrs. Esposito, your response.
Thank you for asking that question. This is what I talked about earlier a little bit on these unfunded mandates that are coming through and without really looking at the repercussions. We look at, I agree with pretty much everything that Mary Ann talked about with regards to the issues with green initiatives. And I think we all probably can agree that, we want to do what's best for the environment, but at what cost? Right now, you're looking at initiatives the state has already put in, and it's been, and a lot of it has failed. So, again, I agree with the same thing. How are you going to plow? You look at Buffalo. Buffalo had a power outage for over a week. How are you going to clear the roads? How are you going to continue with that infrastructure? Some of our small villages, that if they're with the municipalities, how are they going to afford these types of electric vehicles? How is the school bus? We looked at Whitesboro school bus that had problems with the vehicles that they already purchased not starting. I know from experience, some of these electric vehicles don't start in the cold. So what happens with that? Do we have enough power to substantiate that? And that brings up nuclear energy and looking at that. And I think you do need to look at it because the direction the state is going is a direction that can't be sustained, and at what cost? And I think, again, pushing through these things without really thinking it through is something that our state has done time and time again, and then, we're left to deal with the consequences. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to ask a question about an upcoming thing coming up on the next election. This would be New York State Proposition 1, which is going to affect all of our children. Because Proposition 1 is going to allow children at any age to authorize their own sex changes, hormone pills, hormone blockers without parents' consent or knowledge. That's really disturbing. And personally, we mentioned before, we have the one-party system right now. That right there is the reason why this is happening, because there's not a Republican alive who will vote for that. So my situation is basically, what are your thoughts on it? What can we do to stop it? And will you condemn those who participated in voting for it?
You have
Proposition 1 will be on the ballot this election. It's something that I, push for to vote no. It's packaged as an equal rights, amendment, but nowhere in the amendment does it say equal rights. What it will do is, it's very vague, but it will look at the, eliminate the rights of a parent with regards to their child's health care. And so for those reasons alone, it's a scary issue to have come up. It's also going to allow men to compete in women's sports, men to be in women's bathrooms and locker rooms. And I think I think we need to really stop and think about whose rights are they affecting? What about women's rights? What about what the implications of all of this for our young girls? And so I would say, really take a good look at it. Don't take my word for it. Look at it yourself. Look at Proposition 1 yourself and really see what it talks about. I think, sometimes it's used a little bit as a weapon. People talk about, it's going to, secure abortion in our state. But if you look at before Roe versus Wade, abortion was, secure. After Roe versus Wade, you still can get an abortion in the state of New York up to 9 months or the health of a mother. So, either way, and the proposition doesn't even mention abortion in it. And so these are tactics that are used to push this type of proposition through. And it's scary what, the outcome could be for not only for our kids, but the future of our state. And so I encourage everybody, don't take my word for it. Please just read it yourself. Thank you.
Excellent. Mrs. Buttenschon, your response.
So this proposition that was put forward has to go to vote for 2 years. And clearly, as it's been stated, and I had stated earlier, bills are packages. And they try to put some good with the bad and try to identify what is looking to be good or bad. I didn't for the 2 years. It had to have a 2-year vote. So for 2023, I voted no. For 2024, I voted no. It still is a referendum that will come forward that the people of the state of New York will decide. And to the point that stated, take the time to read this very carefully. Because I spent many years in a classroom, okay? And in the process of the child's socialization process, cognitive ability, they just don't have it. They don't have the ability to make decisions like that. They don't have an understanding, and that's why we have a socialization process. So from that point alone, as I spent endless discussions in conference to say, what are we doing here and what are we trying to package? And yes, one thing you'll notice is every bill gets a nickname. And whatever that nickname is, it tries to convince you that this is where it's headed. And some of them sound great, right? You hear it and say, wow, that's really, but when you dig into the deep aspects of understanding it. Now, within a democracy, some individuals pushed back and told me, that's why you're putting it up for referendum. You're letting the people decide. So to that point, I understand that individuals feel that way, but more importantly, I consciously couldn't say that this is something that needs to go forward. There is concerns. I also have within my office something that is it's called a system management. So when you call my office, you ask, hello, what's your name, where do you live? And the purpose is, because if you live in Poughkeepsie, I say, you look up and say, this is who you should call. This is your assembly person. Let them hear your voice. But I want to hear your voice if you're from the 119th Assembly District, because when I go to vote, this is what I want to do, is represent all of you. It's difficult sometimes because I might not agree, but I can tell you that individuals called the office and contacted me and clearly stated this is not something that we support. So this is moving forward. If I look at my academic background as well as the individuals I represent. So thank you.
Excellent. More questions from the floor? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Since being familiar with the streets and crime that is out there, it's not just Rucker Street. There's many different streets. What are you going to do to crack down on crime in the county of N.U.N.A County?
Ms. Buttenschon, I'll leave you first.
Thank you. What I've done is put legislation forward that identifies severe penalties for individuals that want to commit crimes. But I thank you because I know I do mobile office hours also, so I try to go out into the community. And without exception, when I talk to so many of the individuals that are involved within, I don't know if Jimmy's still here. Did you leave? You left? Oh, you had to go to another meeting. But clearly, a lot of it is combined with concerns over mental illness. As the sheriff tells me so many times, there's so many individuals that are within his facility that have mental illness. So as I brought forward the DA, the sheriff, leaders of police, and brought them to Albany, they've been coming on a regular basis, judges, so that they sit with the leadership within the assembly and the governor's office to say, this is what is happening in the Mohawk Valley. We need your help. And to put, how do we change this and ensure that the victims are being heard? And this is the approach that we must continue to take. But the word crime that is identified, and as we couple it with the importance of concerns that we see with individuals that are deemed within mental illness. I mean, I can just tell you a story. A good friend of mine had one of my signs on his lawn, and someone came to the door and started telling things that were untrue about me. And the guy said, what do you want me to do? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. Maybe you need to say, is this individual actually stable, or do they need help, or should we look to try and find guidance for them? I mean, he's like, he came to my door, and he's like, I can't believe this. This is a country where you can express yourself and support each other, you know. So I will continue to support that legislation. I have a few more pieces I can talk about. That judicial discretion I have put forward. Clearly, as we talk about individuals that are my colleagues, I sit in conference and I'm not shy, and I bring facts, because the facts come from all of you to say, this is what happened, and I needed to be heard with each one of them. Just trying to think of some of the other most significant pieces of legislation. I talked about Bianca's law. We have the importance of making sure that each one of these criminal acts have an understanding that an individual that is a victim needs to be heard. So that is one piece that is very strong, and the support is there, because this is a statewide issue.
Excellent, thank you. Mrs. Esposito, your response to this.
So I think that when we take a look at crime, we need to address the fact that the issue with bail reform. My opponent voted for initial bail reform, and we are seeing the outcome in our communities right now. There has to be consequences to a crime. You can't, continually commit a crime and, again, no consequences. We go to the store, we look at our small businesses, people are stealing continuously. I go to Marshall's or TJ Maxx, and people are walking out the door with armful of clothes. Where did we get to this, where our society thinks it's acceptable to do that? And what costs? We as consumers are paying for that cost of having all of those thefts. So I think we need to look at the repercussions of something like bail reform. I think we need to support our police officers and our first responders so that they can do a job. They can protect us. We can protect them to protect us. Also looking at things like our youth, raise the age. I think, the idea of raise the age was really, in my opinion, but I could be wrong, but it was so that, our young youth aren't spending time in jail. But when we don't have the services to support them, it's great that we did this, but then our youth are committing more serious crimes at a older age, and we're not, doing enough to help them, to put them on the right path. Instead, it's almost like an encouragement to commit crimes because nobody's being accountable for it. You look at, I've met so many people walking in the community and they'll say, please say I have my hands tied. There's nothing we can do. Get a camera. They get cameras, the cameras are broken. It's a repetitive issue that we address, that we need to address in our community. I do think there is a mental health issue that, whether it's crime, whether it's homeless, we do need to do better addressing the mental health. So I do agree with that. But I do think that it starts at, bail reform. It starts at, I feel bail reform is, again, protecting the victim or protecting the criminals over the rights of the victim. So if we can look at addressing those issues, I think, and making people accountable for their crimes, then I think we will see changes in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
How will you address foundation aid as well as N.U.N.A funding?
What was the question?
So Mrs. Esposito, you have the first response.
What was the question?
The question was, how will you address foundation aid and AIM funding?
So, are you talking about foundation aid in the school districts? Okay, just wanted to clarify that. So I think we have a problem with foundation aid. I've been on the school board. I've seen it firsthand, especially in the cities of like Utica and Rome, where we're promised a certain amount of money and then the state fails to give us that money, and the repercussions are we end up laying people off. And then in hopes that the money comes down the road, and then we try to hire them back again. And it's this vicious cycle that we lose good teachers. They'll go to schools like New Hartford because they're not getting laid off, the foundation too, and it goes time and time again. And the state has said, we're going to address the issue. They're promising to address the issue. And I think they wrapped it up in the budget this year, and a lot of people, I believe my opponent voted no on state aid, replenish it to a certain point, and as well as increasing the state aid. And so these are things that we need to address in the community. And my disappointment at a state level is they said, okay, we're going to have, we're going to have all these schools get together. But as far as I'm aware, they have yet to come to our area. They've made arrangements to talk to people in other areas, but they have yet to come to Central New York to address our foundation aid. It's a cyclical problem. It's something that has, I haven't been on the school board in 10 years, and it is still an issue every year. And we're losing good teachers. We're having issues where, if we said to the state budget, guess what, guys? You're not going to get your money this year. Us taxpayers are going to come together, and we're not going to give you the money that was expected. And then maybe we'll think about it 6 months, how many months down the line to determine whether or not we're going to give this to you or not. Meanwhile, the state budget goes up 37% in the last how many years, but yet the school budgets are trying to, come up with a difference. And I think Whitesboro was a school district that was short. They shorted them and they had issues as well. And so, again, something that I'm passionate about, I think school districts need to know exactly what they're given so that they can plan and be accountable for that money. But when they're not, or the state fails to do what they promised, it's an issue. So thank you.
And also aid funding.
Oh.
Why don't you turn it up?
As far as AIM funding goes, I'm not as versed in AIM funding. So, you know, I don't want to misquote as far as the specifics of it, but I will look into it and get back to you. Thank you.
Mrs. Buttenschon, your response, please.
So the school funding has been an issue for many, many years. The Foundation aid formula is one that was established initially. And in fact, when you talk about the aspect of bail reform, school funding was placed in there. And Rome Schools was facing tragedy that year. So the Rome funding tied with that. The aspects of bail reform was a 10-year study, and it is. This is why we need to move that legislation forward. But when we're talking about a school district that is going to fail at that point, and it's tied within there. The most important aspect is to take those budget bills and get what they call Article 7 or policy out of them and bring that to the extent of, so it does talk just about our school funding. So right now there's a blue ribbon commission that's been put forward for Foundation aid formula. And that blue ribbon commission is with the Rockefeller Institute. My approach and my push was to have the SUNY system do it, because we have so many students that are graduate students that are looking for research, or when they're doing their dissertation. I can say when I was doing my doctorate, so many different conversations of what should you really do your research on, so that it's going to be considered within the community as something worthwhile. So that's the approach that was looked at and discussed in conference, and the compromise was to use the Rockefeller Institute. So they allocated $1 million for this, and they have come to this area. In fact, Senator Griffo set it up for us. So we all met in Westmoreland schools, and it was a packed house where individuals from each school district were there to have that conversation. And clearly the commissioner has traveled across the state. I'm not 100% sure we're going to get to where we got to go, because we need a lot of work on this. But we did put forward an important piece of legislation that talks about the reduction for seniors within their property tax, because we're seeing that the overwhelming costs that are happening within these schools. And they're significant costs. They're important, but at the same token, the point that the gentleman brought up earlier about the school buses. Even a school bus to purchase them, as you cycle them through that process, it's costly. So identifying the importance in that aspect, I am confident that the Rockefeller Center is a great resource, but I'm not sure we're going to get to where we have to do. 2 years ago, we said we fully funded foundation aid, but then there's expense-based aid. So all they did is took the numbers and moved them over here and took from the other side. So it's not like it's something that was being done truthfully. And it's something that is very serious, and it is looked upon as one of the largest budget factors that we see. As far as AIM funding, so AIM funding is for our municipalities. That's what that money is, and it's allocated annually. The difficulty that we have with AIM funding is it's not predictable, and Mike can tell you that, is that it is something that is so hard to move within this process. This year we did. We didn't provide the funding that it was, so I couldn't support it. The funding that the local municipalities need has to be significant for you to be able to thrive. And if you don't have it, you can't move forward. I can tell you that the new mayor in Utica said to me, he goes, why don't you just give us the money? Instead of all these little aid and then grant here and the grant here. I mean, it makes sense. But I don't ever see that happening. I would push for it because it makes sense. It could be sustainable. You can understand. You could do strategic plans. You can plan out, as Joe talked earlier, with the highway infrastructure that needs to be done, and he does. If anyone can tell you, he comes to me every chance possible. I mean, Herkimer Road, that was paid New York funding. But that didn't happen until Joe kept pushing and pushing. But that's AIM funding. That's part of that component that we see. So I hope I answered your question, Mike, other than you can tell the mayor, I don't see her changing that formula that's been around since the Pataki era. But it's clearly something that we can see.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Buttenschon. Any other questions from the floor? We've got time for 2 more questions. All right. Well, all right. There we go. So think of, we need 1 more.
How are you gonna make your schools safer? We've been talking about the Sandy Hook, the Remington that put it out of business. How are you making your schools safer with the guns and security issues in the schools?
Ms. Buttenschon, you're first. Ms. Esposito.
So we have put forth legislation, the sheriff came forward, so Senator Griffin and I carry legislation for any threat that is put forward, increasing the penalties for that. The difficulty we see, and I'm not sure if you're aware, over the last 2 weeks, I think we've had close to 6 threats in our Mohawk Valley schools. But when the threat is made by a child, now we have to determine if does the legislation hold the parent accountable, or what should we do? And what type of services, as we're seeing other states are doing that. Because we're trying to identify what is the best approach. But when the child's 8 years old and clearly significantly shut down the rest of the school, each one of those children, teachers, support staff, everybody that was there, their lives were stopped. Because this 8-year-old, obviously, what we see is the guidance. The processes of what I've done is hosted youth roundtables not only here, but in Albany to talk about the need for beds for our children. And those are secure beds. And it isn't to say that we're talking about not helping this child, but this is a safe, secure place. So for some reason, this activity, this criminal activity occurred, to put them right back in the same environment, I don't see how that would help. And I don't have any academic research that would identify that. So thank you. So legislatively is what we've done.
Excellent. Ms. Esposito, your response.
I think it's difficult because you have to look at every threat and take them seriously. So, and I think that's what our resource officers, our police are doing currently. But the school district need more assistance. They need more assistance with mental health. They need more resources. So I think as a statewide level, we expect things from our school districts, but we can do more to assist them. And so those are, I would look at, again, going back to raise the age, more beds, that definitely is something that I think we both agree on, that needs to be addressed in our area. And then as far as, I just want to go back to the mental health issue. It's a huge issue in our society, and sometimes it's only getting worse. So whether it's to additional crime, whether it's attributed to drugs, whether it's just a mental health issue itself, we are slowly seeing more and more issues come up, and it's something that we need to allocate a certain amount of money to address those issues. So mental health, more resources, support our police officers, support our schools are a few things that I would look to do in order to secure those that go to the schools.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions from the floor? We got one right there. Perfect. All right.
You both have mentioned, with some of the bills that come in, that there may be good bills out there, but then there's always other things that are attached to them. So they're kind of like pushing through the good stuff, and some of the garbage goes to the either party can agree with. I see that happen all the time at a national level. So explain to me, why cannot standalone bills be put forth? If you we just put a standalone bill for the good things, they pass with no trouble at all, and we can do so much more good for the state by passing the easy stuff first, and then work on the difficult stuff afterwards.
Ms. Esposito, you have the first response.
That's a good question. I think, the problem is that people want other things to be passed. In order to get them passed, they're packaging it with something that's good. So, you look at whether it's school districts, whether you're looking at giving money out, you're like, well, I'll be able to get this passed because I'm packaging it with something good, and we'll deal with the consequences down the road. And New York State has been great at doing that. And at what cost? It's been a cost to all of us citizens. And so, can they do that? Do they choose not to do that? That's an option. I go back to this one-party rule, supermajority. That's what's pushing all this stuff together. I worked for the Senate. The Republicans had the Senate, the Democrats had the Assembly, and it wasn't this one-party supermajority. And in order to get things passed, they had to work together. So when they tried to push this garbage through on one legislation, the other party would say, wait a minute, you need some of our votes to get this passed, and we're not going to go with all this stuff you added in. So you're going to have to pull it out of that bill. And that's how you had a voice in Central New York. Now, it's one party that's passing all this legislation, so they're going to put in whatever they choose to put in that bill in hopes that it'll get passed. And so that's where you have this problem of sneaking everything through, not knowing what's in there, pushing, things in a good bill that may be bad, and it's a huge problem in New York State. And the only way to do that is to take people out of the supermajority. And so that's what I say, there's 3 seats in the Assembly to take them out of the supermajority, 1 seat in the Senate. That will bring checks and balances to the state, and that's how you change things. Thank you.
Mrs. Buttenschon, your response.
So there is the ability to have bills that stand alone. Bills are the ones that generally receive the packaging. That is, again, been going on for quite some time, back to the Pataki era. So it is something that within those packages. Now, within a standalone bill, as I talked with the legislation about terrorist threats on a school, it's very clear. Some bills can be in length, some bills are maybe a paragraph or less. So there is that ability depending on what needs to be done. And I use Clean Slate as an example too, a bill that I did not support because what was in it, we kept working year after year to peel it back. It was 3 years. And then finally, as it came forward, it still didn't provide the benefits that we needed. So Clean Slate is wiping someone's record, which makes sense in certain situations. But wonder if they're applying to a school and the crime that they had been convicted of should affect anyone that works in that district, as well as the children that are there. And that just didn't get cleaned up. So there is the ability, in a sense, to make sure that a bill is very clear. I carry a bill fleeing from a police officer, and that evolved from the horrific murder that we see with Officer Jensen. or as I sat with the family. And it's very clear. The crime is fine. So I also wanted to just add a little bit in regards to making sure that those bills are as clear as can be. The unfortunately is each individual that's coming forward to add to that budget bill tries to add their own, shall we say, their own needs that they're seeing within it, whether it's AIM funding, whether it's education funding. So with those 9 budget bills, each one is broken down in different areas, but unfortunately, they get combined in a manner that isn't appropriate. So I will continue to push that, and I've done it since the beginning. I have served when there is Republican control of the Senate, as well as and then Democrat control within the Assembly. I can tell you that within conference, I continue to fight for this area, and I'll never stop. And I have many colleagues in the Upstate Caucus. We're meeting tomorrow morning. That's what we do, is to look at what's best for Upstate New York. So as far as that, everyone getting along, it doesn't really happen. There's a continued pushback. And I don't look at it as party. I just look at it as what do we need for the Mohawk Valley. And I will continue to work with everyone to make sure that we can do the best in this area. So thank you.
One final question, then their final thoughts, and then to speak with them direct. So the final question would be, there is a New York State Senate Bill 7506A, which addresses the ammunition background check and the fee associated with it. And I know Senator Griffo had formally talked about that bill still being in committee in the Senate, and he planned on co-sponsoring it. If that bill is raised from the Senate and goes to the Assembly for consideration, is that a bill that either of you would support? If so, why or why not? Mrs. Bunch.
You need to read it. Seriously.
As do many members.
No, but that's just, I think it's the point that was brought up earlier. Make sure you read what you're going to be a part of. I don't co-sponsor bills lightly. I make sure that I understand what is within them. And I mean, generally, I have the utmost faith when the senator's talking, if he's worked with people within this community and he feels it's something that we need. And I know with the background check, and I know I've been to many scope meetings, and it's important. It really is to make sure that we're ensuring that those individuals that want to carry a gun legally and want to purchase ammunition. So,
discounting the specifics of the bill, do you support the general concept of repealing the ammunition background check and the fee associated? Discounting the specifics of the Senate bill.
I think that clearly sounds like a good idea. I will take a look at it. I don't want anything hidden in there, you know. But if you're just telling me you just want no background, you can go purchase as much ammunition as you want. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what proponents are requesting. So in other words, lawful gun owners are already registered to carry those firearms, and therefore they have to show that license to purchase the ammunition. But the state has implemented through the SAFE Act a secondary process that now has a fee, and it is affecting small businesses that, you know, service those gun owners. And those
so you're just the fee or the background?
The background check as well, because those folks have already undergone the background check to purchase the firearm. And assuming that there are no turbos or anything outstanding, which would show in the system, those folks should have that access. That's what proponents are advocating.
And I would sit with the DA, I'll sit with law enforcement and say, let's talk about this and what needs to be done.
Sure.
And like you said with the ERPOs, so you're telling me that over here, what's the one right here in the plaza?
Bass Pro Shop.
They have access to who has an ERPO on them in here?
If it flags in the system, yes, they do.
Okay. So that.
Matter of fact, Senator Griffo was denied access to ammunition at some point. So the system is very flawed, I guess is the issue.
That's my point.
Right.
That are we ready for it? Is it? I'm not sure. I'll take a look at it. It sounds like it fits. I will read it and I will make sure that I give you that. It's S what?
7506A.
Ms. Esposito, your response, please.
Can you hear me? So, you said it was 7506A, correct? And, you know, I think what we need to do is look at, enforcing the laws that are already in the books. I would support, Senator Grifo with this, as far as, right now, we have so many different regulations when it comes to ammunition. You can't carry the same ammunition that you're using for hunting in the same area in your vehicle when you're driving. You know, they're looking at counting ammunition. My issue is that, you know, criminals are not going to abide by the law. And what you're doing is only hurting citizens that are law-abiding citizens that are going to try everything possible to make sure they do everything that they can with regards to being gun owners, ammunition owners. And I think this is just another hindrance to law-abiding citizens. You know, we look at somebody who has a loaded handgun in their car, who's committed a crime previously and is released. But yet, somebody who's, you know, getting ammunition to go target practicing or hunting, you're trying to put restrictions on them. So I think we need to punish people who commit crimes with any, whether it's a firearm, any weapon at all, but looking at penalizing law-abiding citizens by making it very difficult for them to even own ammo isn't the direction we need to. I think we need to go. I think we need to look at, you know, punishing people who commit crimes with a weapon, whether it's a gun, whether it's a knife, whatever it is, not releasing them. So if we can focus on that, I think we'll be better off. Thank you.
And Mrs. Buttenschon, your closing statement, Mrs. Esposito.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, as I sincerely appreciate it. I got a lot of great notes here, and the work that you did, and the work you gave me, I'll get it done. Clearly, the Mohawk Valley is my home, and will always be my home. I'm here to listen. I feel that you are the individuals that are the most important and the ones that need to be heard in Albany. It is a tough place at times, I will admit it. It's difficult and challenging, but I sit in the majority, I sit with the caucus, and I represent you. And I understand that our needs are different from anywhere across the state of New York. And I find that those challenges can be head on if we have facts, which come from all of you. And those facts are, this is what has happened. As Steve brought up the issue in regards to legislation, I'm asked to co-sponsor legislation during session anywhere from 100 times a day to 5 times a day. So it's that much to this much. But I read everything before I put my name on it, and I read it in detail. I understand, you know, I'm a hunter. I respect it. I understand the difficulties. Those meetings are very informative. So, but I don't have to take the time, and that's what I do when I'm in the assembly, is take the time to look at everything. So again, I appreciate it, and I please reach out if you have any great legislative ideas, because any of those pieces of legislation that I'm very proud to carry have come from people like you. If you just have an idea, and I want to make sure I bring it forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Esposito, closing statement.
Thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight. I appreciate all of you here and getting some good feedback and input with regards to your concerns in our community. Thank you, Marianne, for being here as well. Sometimes it's not always easy. I think we're both good people. I think we just both have different opinions when it comes to our policies and politics. I think if you're looking for a change, if you're looking to question things, get out of this supermajority one-party rule, if you're looking to have a voice in Central New York, a bigger voice with more input with regards to what's going on. Currently, the direction of the assembly with them being the supermajority is we vote on the budget and we vote on Carl Hesty, who determines the direction of our state. And again, we're left to deal with the consequences of that. And so I just question, I just want you to ask yourself, is this the same direction we want to go for the next couple of years? Or do we want to make some changes here? We have the opportunity to do so. So I hope you would consider me as a person to look for in your, as an assembly person for your next election. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just would like to thank our candidates for being generous with their time and being here. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming out and supporting the event. Hopefully, these folks are able to satisfy your questions, but I'm sure there's points of contact that both candidates have left on the table for you. The formal portion of the meeting is going to end. And what I would ask is if the candidates still have some time, if you'd like to stay up at the dais and let folks come up and speak with you directly. I know I had some comments and concerns that they wanted to bring up. Yes, sir.
I was focused on Wednesday, October 9th.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so we will be at the Irish Cultural Center on October 9th. The Neighborhood Associations of Utica have teamed up. Our West Utica Neighborhood Association folks are here with us, and that is typically their location there. And so I would invite all of you to come and join us on October 9th. We will make sure that we send an email out, and everybody is made aware of that. We'll also put it out in the media, on social media as well. But please take a note of that date. There is a flyer up in the front, so if you want to snap a picture of that and put it on your calendar. Yes, ma'am.
Don't forget, East Utica, October 7th, 6 o'clock at Twin Towers. All welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Mrs. Hunt. We appreciate that as well. All right, so the formal portion of our meeting has ended. And like I said, if you'd like to come and interact with the candidates, please feel free to do so. Thank you.